Okay, good morning, everyone. I am sitting here in Concon, Chile right now. I'm down here because of the harvest, and normally I try to cover off on 4 countries, but due to the pandemic, of course, I'm limited in my ability to get around, so I will not be going to Argentina, but I will be visiting a number of wineries here in Chile while I'm here. Down here, we have a large crop. It's a late season. And we've also had a fair amount of rain, which is, of course, what I was alluding to earlier in the fact that we have a massive drought in California. We've received less than 9 inches when normally we would receive about 42 inches, which has had a huge impact on us. Myself personally, because I was about to plant 20 acres on a vineyard called Stonemason Hill, but I'm going to be restricted to about 2 or 3 acres at most, which is very unfortunate. Obviously with a low rainfall, of course, it's going to put a lot of pressure on tonnage for California in 2021. Meantime, Australia is having a fairly good vintage. They had some good rain in over 2020, and so they're in a good condition. New Zealand is going to be massively short this year. We are off about 30%, unbelievable as it may seem. Our clusters are minute in Marlborough in New Zealand this year. Will be the lowest crop since probably 2003. So as you know, 2020 was a difficult vintage in California, and so it continues throughout the rest of the year, rest of the world. So what I'm going to do is I have about 60 odd slides here that I have, and I'm not going to go through all of them, of course, due to lack of time, but I'm going to send these to Amanda and Jackie afterwards, and Jim, and they can share them around. I'll put them in a Dropbox or something similar to that. So just let's see if I can get this thing going. Slideshow is not opening from the beginning. So I can't say enough about being able to work with Wegmans, and such a privilege. And I think that with the evolution of wine and it's really become obvious during COVID times is that it's very hard for small producers to get to market. And I think you can look at the future of wine today, even really, if you just look at France, Germany, and Italy, and basically all of those wineries are either farm to gate or through negotiation. So to be able to be a mid-sized company like us and find partners like Wegmans, you got no idea, it's such a godsend. So please look after small and medium-sized family businesses, because otherwise we'll be very restricted to drinking negotiant wines or having you guys come out directly. There's a little bit of my resume of what I've done over time. So I've been in California basically since 1990. I was the winemaker at Simi for 14 years. I am from New Zealand. I trained in Australia. But today I basically drive tractors. I'm a farmer. I'm a winemaker. I'm a consultant, obviously, because I'm down here, and I'm also an inventor. The wines that we make with Wegmans exclusively, and these are absolutely exclusive. There's nobody else I make exclusive wines for, only Wegmans. Everyone else who I make wines for exclusive to the state, not exclusive to the whole country. So we do not sell any of these wines to anybody else except to you. And the newest wine that we've added, of course, is the Paua Rock, and then we're looking at adding a couple of wines to Stationmaster. We may even apply to you guys for a Merlot in the future, but Frantic will be coming to you soon, and Lawless is obviously the big one. This is a picture of my family, my 5 children. This is my front yard. I make wines with my 3 daughters. I don't make wines with my sons, but one of my sons is a winemaker. But this was taken in 2020, and it's been very interesting having adult children move home during COVID times. 4 of them are here. Chelsea, our oldest daughter, she's married, so her husband lives with us as well. And Catherine is a vet, but so she does not live with us, but the other 4 do. So there's actually 9 in our bubble. So I have a theory that I'm a white guy, and I'm 85 years old. When I'm 80, I'm going to, the average white guy lives to 85. So I've got 19,700 days left in my life. So if I drink 1 bottle of bad wine, it's like throwing a good bottle of wine against the wall. I've got a very limited amount of time left. But the advantage of living with having 9 in your bubble is we're drinking 4 to 5 bottles of wine a night. So I'm well ahead of the curve, and I'm enjoying wines immensely. Oops, sorry, I had to let somebody in, and it's changed our slideshow. So these are the Paua Rocks labels. We make a Sauvignon Blanc, 2 Pinot Noirs, and a Rosé, and this is a Paua. So a Paua is a New Zealand abalone. It's a little bit smaller than what you consider to be an abalone in California, or what we more similar to the locos that we have here in Chile. And in New Zealand, this is a black meat rather than a white meat, but it's very fluorescent. It's very funny. We used to use them as cigarette trays when you were kids, right? I mean, that's what Paua shells were for. And we never thought of them as being a delicacy or anything like that, but here we are today. They're extremely colorful. A lot of jewelry in New Zealand is made out of Paua, and it's the Maori name for the abalone. And the Maori is a very strong indigenous race in New Zealand. They're politically very strong. They always have members in the government. When you're born in New Zealand, you're part of a tribe, and I'm part of, believe it or not, I'm part of the Ngāti Whātua, because I'm from the far north of New Zealand, up here in a place called Mangawhai. So Mangawhai is about 2.5 hours north of Auckland. Auckland is our biggest city, so when you come to New Zealand, you would land in Auckland. But the vineyards that we're going to be talking about today are from Marlborough in central Otago. In Marlborough, we have 3 main appellations. There's the Wairau Valley, the Awatere Valley, and Ward. We don't talk about Ward. The Wairau Valley flows into Cloudy Bay. The Awatere Valley flows into Clifford Bay. And the vineyard that we're talking about with Paua Rock is a vineyard that I own out here just to the east of Renwick. We don't need to show you the vineyard, but I can assure you that that's Cloudy Bay. This is Alan Scott. This is Paratai, which is Matua's top wine. This is Stoneleigh, which is probably the best vineyard in all of Marlborough. And then we are next door. So it's a very good neighborhood. Everything is machine harvested because we don't have labor like we have in California. You can also notice that we have the green grass. We don't use herbicides. And we need the grass there because we have a lot of moisture during harvest, and it's very good for us to be able to have the ability to machine harvest. This is a rare photo because most of the machine harvesting occurs at night when we're very close to the winery, and of course when it's harvested cold, the berries remain and whole much longer.
Here we are at the Fitzroy Vineyard, just driving down the road. This is the way we do it in New Zealand. We make our roads just wide enough for our rental cars to fit down. You can see we're not quite ready yet. A little bit of time to go. We've still got the waxy outside to the Sauvignon Blanc. And so we're close to Verizon, but not yet. Anyway, another gorgeous day in Marlborough.
So every 10 rows, we sort of plant a little bit wider so the winemaker can drive their rental car down the road, which is pretty funny. So I hope Phil, I can see you. I hope you heard that video. Was that true? Yeah. So this is one of our vineyards called Fitzroy, and this is where we actually make the Paua Rock. That's a little shed that I live in when I'm down there. Beautiful location. The key thing about Sauvignon Blanc for us is the age of the vines are about 30 plus years now, which makes the vineyard be in much more balance than if it's a young vineyard. So we don't have to do a lot of field work, which is really important. The other thing is we're vertical shoot position because, of course, we have a lot of botrytis or humidity down in Marlborough. So just looking at the Sauvignon Blanc, the key elements are, number one, we don't sell it to the British because we don't sell this wine to the British even under another label. I mean, the British drink more Sauvignon Blanc, New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc than the Americans, but look at what the British eat. I mean, it's not exactly the most desirable foods in the world, is it? I mean, at least in the US, we eat Mediterranean food, so we want to have our Sauvignon Blancs be a little bit lush and a little bit fuller and not so squeaky green and clean and all that. The second thing is it's single vineyard. Most of the other Sauvignon Blancs that you would be selling on the shelf would be blended. And as I said, this is only it's only for Wegmans. I've just left you a little bit of flavor profile, but basically if you look at my face right now, hopefully you can see me, but basically Sauvignon Blanc comes in the mouth kind of broad and then has this really clean mouthfeel. And the things that make a wine more structural are CO2, acid, wood, and the temperature that you serve it at. And the things that make a wine textural or fatter is pH, alcohol, fruit, and sugar, and malolactic. Obviously, we don't do malolactic with Sauvignon Blanc. So it's a matter of getting these 9 things in balance. But for me, for Wegmans, I don't want to have a tight, lean machine. I don't want to have that grapefruity grassy thing. I want to have a little bit more texture. Hopefully you see that in the wine. The latest offering that you guys are going to be getting is the rosé. So, man, I can tell you I've had a couple of bottles of the rosé already. I had them shipped to me straight away. And it's certainly going to be my drink of the summer. My kids are already hoeing into they drank the first 2 bottles without me even looking. But what's really cool is making the Pinot Noirs. So we're making one from Marlborough, which is quite different to Central Otago. I know Central Otago, which we'll talk about in a second, I'll show you where it's from, is become the cool hip area, you know, a little bit more Oregon based, more similar to the prestige of Oregon. But Marlborough has the weight and the power. So it's really interesting to look at the two side by side. Marlborough has more flesh. It's a darker wine. It's quite rich. Lots of opulence, sort of mulberry fruits, cranberry fruits, etc. But when you compare that to the one from Central Otago, the Central Otago is really bright and full on, and it doesn't have the depth of weight that the Marlborough has, but it has this juiciness and this drinkability. And I will admit I've had a couple of these already, and I've posted a couple of videos of me drinking the Central Otago wine. And this is the first Central Otago Pinot that we've actually brought into the US under any label. Right now we only make Central Otago and sell it in New Zealand. Yeah, please go ahead and drink while I talk. I sound a lot more interesting if you do that. So the Alexandra is so Central Otago is a relatively unknown area probably to you guys. It's I mean, you're probably more familiar with Marlborough because you've seen so many more wines from Marlborough. But from Central Otago, we also have a lot of sub-appellations. Just like we had the Wairau Valley in Marlborough, we certainly have a lot of sub-appellations in Otago. We are in the Alexandra, not Alexander, like we are in California, but Alexandra sub-region of Central Otago. It's certainly the most continental. It's like, we know it's continental because this is where we can grow apricots. And so it's a really interesting area. The soils are mainly alluvial, which is really good for us, especially for Pinot Noir. And climatically, it's a much drier than Marlborough as well, even though it's further south. The winemaking's classical, everything's, you know, less than 8-ton fermenters. They're usually 5-ton. It's all hand punched. And this is a photo of the Central Otago region. It's quite a big region. The capital of Central Otago, of course, the capital of Otago, of course, is Dunedin, which is the biggest city, second biggest city in the South Island. The biggest city, of course, is Christchurch. And then Dunedin is the second biggest city, which is the capital of the Otago region. It was a really big night last night. It was the rugby match. I had to get up at 3 a.m. in the morning to watch it because Canterbury, Christchurch played Otago, which is Highlanders versus the Crusaders, which was a massive game for the South Island, and unfortunately Dunedin lost. Anyway, these are the appellations that you may have heard of. Bannockburn is the other one that's quite common. There's new vineyards. Well, there are older vineyards in Cromwell, which is interesting, being a little bit, it's warmer, but there's also less water. So Alexandra and Bendigo are probably my two favorite areas, Bendigo being a little bit cooler, Alexandra being a little bit warmer. Gippsland is the traditional area. You may have heard of the city called Queenstown, which is very popular amongst tourists, and that's much closer to the Gippsland Valley. So any questions on New Zealand that you can throw into the chat if you like, but it's really great to, you know, I left New Zealand in 1984 and went to Australia to train. So it's a real fun project to be back in New Zealand and making these 4 different wines for you guys. And I'm just really excited about really opening the doors and trying these wines out. All good, you guys? All right, we'll keep going on Stationmaster. Hopefully you've drunk your 2 New Zealand wines, and then we'll roll into, I think you got 2 New Zealand wines there, or you got 3? You got 3, right?
3.
Yeah. So
beautiful wines, Nick.
Hopefully you guys have a chance to try all those while we move into the next bunch of wines, because I'd like to spend a little bit more time on these others. So Stationmaster is it's quite My wife is very, I may be sarcastic, but she's probably even more sarcastic. So she calls me the hunter and she's the farmer. So I'm the guy that goes out there and finds different vineyards and different people to work with and things like that. And then she has to damage control. So that's where the name Stationmaster sort of comes around. He's the guy that stands at the station and just directs traffic and really doesn't do any of the hard work. So anyway, that's her euphemism for Stationmaster. This is her design of the label as well, in conjunction with Jim and team and putting this label together. So the big wines, obviously the Chardonnay and the Cabernet, but we've added a red wine, which has been really cool. And maybe we'll consider a Merlot in the future. So where I'm normally sitting is at the center of the universe, of course, which is called Healdsburg. And the reason why it's the center of the universe is that we're 1 hour from the Golden Gate Bridge to San Francisco. And we have 280 wineries in Healdsburg. And we have, because we have a number of appellations. So we have the Alexander Valley to the north. We have Dry Creek, where I live, to the west. We have Chalk Hill to the east, and we have Russian River to the south. So we are going to be talking about Chardonnay, and the Stationmaster Chardonnay comes from one of the southernmost pieces of the Russian River, and it's an area called the Sebastopol Hills. The key thing about this, and this is kind of the most complicated piece, I'll come off the screen so you can see me, and I don't have a stick with me because I would have brought a cutting with me to show you this, but I couldn't bring it through customs because you can't bring wood through customs. But basically, in the winter, we go into the vineyard and we take cuttings, and that cutting is usually 3 buds long. We take 50 of them, we wrap them up, we put them in a cool room. In the spring, we bring those cuttings out, and you can imagine it's a stick with 3 buds on it. I take a knife, I chip the bud out, I take a rootstock, which in the early days was called AXR1. I make a little cut like a T in the bark. I peel the bark back, I slip the bud into the match the cambium layer, I tape it up, and I can grow Chardonnay. The 1960s, 70s, and 80s, everything was fantastic. At some point, though, winemakers started going into the vineyard and they said, you know what? You know, that vine tastes different to the other vines. And so they said, look, those ones are more pineapple-y, those ones are more grassy, et cetera, et cetera. And so they just collected cuttings from those particular vineyards. And then we'd plant all of the pineapple or muscatty tasting vines in one vineyard, or the grassy tasting vines in another vineyard, et cetera. And we had names for these things. They were called field selections or mass selections. And everything went really well until 1989, when unfortunately we had phylloxera for the second time. And we just found out, of course, I hope there's no French people watching. I normally pick on the French, the Australians, the Portuguese, and the English. Anyway, so the French, I'm going to pick on the French a little bit here, but we didn't know this, but the French had sold us this rootstock called AXR1, and unfortunately they had put some Vitis vinifera in it. Now, Vitis vinifera is Cabernet, Chardonnay, Merlot. What you know as wine is Vitis vinifera. What we think of as rootstocks, though, is Vitis labrasca, Blanderi, Rupestris, and these other rootstocks. These other rootstocks were resistant to phylloxera. So you take a rootstock and then you put the scion on top, Chardonnay, scion spelled S-C-I-O-N. You put that on top, and these are the 2 parts of the plant. And when you go to the nursery today and you buy a peach tree or whatever, you'll notice there's 2 parts to that plant as well, and you'll see a little swelling there. And that's because they use rootstocks to help the roots be a little bit deeper. They carry less virus. They can live with insects such as nematodes and phylloxera, and so the plant can grow. All right, everything went great until 1989, 1990. We got phylloxera. And so we realized that we had the wrong rootstocks. And when we went out and we took these field selections and put them on top of the new rootstock, guess what? These things didn't match anymore because there was no Vitis vinifera in the rootstock. So these things were not related. So we got leaf roll, stem pitting, corky bark, a lot of diseases. And unfortunately, the yields went down and vines died. So the scientists said, look, there's 2 ways we can solve this problem. We use cloning. And there's 2 ways to get clones. You go into the vineyard and find one vine that didn't show any virus. And that became clone 1. The other way to do it was, and this is how I got into grapes, is through meristem tissue culture. I don't want to bore you guys too much, but you take a leaf, you slit the veins on the leaf, you grow the vine, you take the tip, you grow the vine, you take the tip, you grow the vine 3 times, and what you're doing is you're outgrowing the virus, you put it on their new rootstock, clone 2. Fantastic. The unfortunate thing is, by cleaning the fruit up, you've removed all the virus, and it was the virus that was giving us all the different flavors. And that's why Chardonnay tastes the same today. Every bottle of Chardonnay, you've heard the term Dijon clone, UC Davis clone, Espargette clone from Italy. This is so boring. And if I hear somebody describe my Chardonnay as peach, white peach, I'm going to throw up. I mean, that's like 90% of all the bloody Chardonnay in the universe. Dijon clones, oh my God, the clone 76 and the clone 95, yeah, one's a little bit muscatty. No, they're all the same. The definition of a clone is you know who your mother is. You can track everything back to one plant. How boring is that? We like to have these old field selections that have got these different flavors in them and add uniqueness. And that's what another reason why with this particular wine, I'm making it about 40% in concrete and 60% in barrel, because I want to maintain some of that, what we call calcium carbonate character, that minerality, the gunflint, and I want to have that tension. When you drink that Chardonnay, you're going to get, that tension thing. And I learned this when I was 28 years old. LVMH had maybe the still winemaker for the world or whatever. I traveled to Portugal. I go hang out with winemakers in Portugal. Wow, hanging out with winemakers in Portugal. Ooh, it's 110 degrees. The reason why everyone in Portugal is skinny is not because their economy sucks, it's because the food is really hard to eat. They eat these things called barnacles. They're about this long. You get 3 of them in a mouthful, right? You eat 3 barnacles, you're drinking port, it's 110 degrees, and you go, oh my God, this is not my sense of fun. So I said to one of the winemakers, hey, dude, do you make white wine in Portugal? And he goes, no way, man, we don't make white wine in Portugal. Young lady in a restaurant walks by, she goes, don't worry, sir, I'll help you out. So she brings a glass of wine, fills it up like my mother, right, to the top. The condensation's pouring off this glass. I get the wine and go, like, damn, what was that? All the enamel on my teeth is gone. The roof of my mouth is gone. I'm like, what? And I didn't know what a Vino Verde was. But the cool thing about Vino Verde is you drink it and you go, man, am I hungry or am I thirsty? I mean, I can sell you 1 glass of wine, but can I sell you 2? And it's that sensation of, damn it, I got to go back and have something to eat or something to drink. And that's what I want to get into the Chardonnay. You drink that wine, you go, damn it, I've got to have another glass. And it's that sensation, and that's why the stories are created, and we're sitting down and having dinner every night and just being able to sit around and drink wine with food and enjoy. This is why I find wine so interesting. I mean, I used to be a brewer. Guess what I do at work the next day? It's the same as what I did yesterday. The key thing about beer is making it taste the same. The thing about wine is we want it to be different. So I get to tell the beer story once. I get to tell the vodka story once. I get to tell the wine story every year, because I get to talk about the vintage and the people and the culture of people is so important. And this is why over the 30 years I've lived in California, I've traveled in the US 10 weeks a year. I mean, I've been to Pennsylvania, and not as many times as some of the other states because we won't get into politics, but it's the cultural sensation of, sitting down there and having a glass of wine with you guys and just chewing the fat, and that's why you've got to have wine that make people wake up. When I go to a restaurant, I want to have a new sensation. When I go to a restaurant, I'm crazy. I always order something I've never heard of before, or some mixture or ingredient that they over expound on, which you're obviously proud about. It's the same thing with a bottle of wine. When somebody walks into the store or a restaurant, you guys are the safety net. You guys have experienced the wine. You've tasted the wine. You know what it's like. So you can say, hey, instead of buying that label with a tree on it, nice and shiny, how about trying one of these wines? You could probably get 2 for 1, or you're not paying for the marketing development. You're talking about a product that comes from a person and a place, and it's a single vineyard, and it makes it interesting. And these are the stories. So anyway, I know we don't have a lot of time to talk about the stories today, but let's buzz through the key ingredients. So the main ingredient that's really important here is that this Chardonnay that you're tasting is an old mass selection. It's an old field selection. And the reason why it's still on AXL1 is because it's on this Gold Ridge sandy loam, which the phylloxera cannot live in.
Good morning. It's a little warm out here in the Russian River this morning. I'm in the Sebastopol Hills, and this is the vineyard where we make Stationmaster. And what's unique about this vineyard is that it's on an old Goldridge sandy loam. Let me check it out for you. So if I pick this up, you can see it's just a talcum powder dust soil, and that means that the soil was never replanted, or these vines were never replanted. There's still an AXR1. No one uses AXR1 rootstock anymore because it's not resistant to phylloxera. So what's unique about the vine is that these are all mass selections, and they were planted in 1984, so we have big berries and small berries in the same cluster. These are not your typical Dijon clones, which gives you sort of the white peach and apple character. This is going to give you more of the subtropical and a lot of mineral, a lot of graphite as well. So sort of melon and passion fruit, but then this graphite, this leanness that you get in the wine is amazing. Anyway, that's the secret to set in stone, is the vineyard. Beautiful day out here, Sebastopol Hills and the Russian River. Wish you were here. Enjoy Stationmaster.
So you can see the soil is very powdery. You can see that the cluster's got big berries and small berries in the same cluster. And we often talk about old vine Zinfandel. Sometimes we talk about old vine Cabernet, but we never talk about old vine Chardonnay. And that's what you guys are going to be doing. The clones were produced for larger yields and faster accumulators of sugar, so it's not so interesting. Stylistically, this is where Russian River sits today. Warm fruit, cool fruit, structured texture. The Stationmaster, sorry, this is the Stationmaster slide, but the Stationmaster has more structure to it and a little bit more subtropical. I'm not going to talk about malolactic fermentation today because it could be a very complicated question, but I know that we want to move on to the Cabernet, and so I've given you some tasting notes here that you can share around a little bit later. In terms of red wines, we make a number of wines. We Frantic, which you do not have yet, which is a red blend from Oakville, Lawless, which you do have, and of course Cabernet, which you have in front of you today. This is a picture of the vineyard, so it's a single vineyard. The Cabernet comes from the hills. We do not include this Cabernet. This goes into the red blend, but this hillside goes into the Cabernet that you guys have got, and some of the other varietals, the Petit Verdot, the Cab Franc, and the Merlot, which go into the red blend.
Good afternoon. I think this is the perfect view for Stationmaster Vineyard. So down there by the river, the darker green with a little bit of light green running through it, that is the Merlot that goes into the red blend. There's a little block, you'll see an avenue down there, and just to the left of that avenue is the Petit Verdot, and then we are standing up here in the Cabernet, and then right off in the distance over there, right over there by the river, so that's Fitch Mountain there, and then come down from Fitch Mountain, you'll see a nice vineyard right over there by the river. That's the Chardonnay. So this is where the Stationmaster comes from, and we are standing up here in the Cabernet Sauvignon, one of the best vineyards I know of in the Alexander Valley.
So that vineyard is 16 acres. It's the beautiful thing is it's Piedmont, so it's mid-slope. It's not at the top of the hill where the soils are too thin, and it's not at the bottom of the hill where the moisture runs. This is mid-slope. The second thing that's important to me, it's east facing, so it's morning sun. We don't get the afternoon burn. And it's cane prune, which we don't need to go into. And then I'm pretty gentle in terms of the extraction when it comes to the winery. This is a drone shot of the vineyard, and you can see that here, and this is how you make a complex wine from one side. So you can see here the canopy is very big. And so this vineyard is undercropped. So we don't have enough fruit on this canopy, and that's why you get this difference in appearance. So we get more canopy, more leaves, and less fruit. Here, unfortunately, we had a bit of a slip here, but in the middle slope here, you can see that the canopy isn't about the right balance, fruit-wise, canopy-wise, but here you can see we're overcropped. The canopy is too small, and so we spend a lot of time dropping fruit here. This is a very important video for me because you can actually see the last shot of my Suburban that my young daughter Hillary rode off the next day. So this is a memorial to my beautiful car. Anyway. Long story. We won't talk too much about the winemaking, but basically we talk about EPD winemaking, elegant winemaking, powerful winemaking, and dense winemaking. So the vineyard that was overcropped, we drop all the fruit. is where we get the elegance. The power comes from the middle, and the dense comes from the undercrop piece. And I could talk all day about how we got to that conclusion very early in my career, thanks to another consultant that I was working with. The red blend that we talk about will always be 85% Cabernet Merlot. That will always be a major part of that. It will always be single vineyard from our vineyard, and the balance will be made up of Petit Verdot, Malbec, and Cab Franc. When people drink red blends, most red blends today have Syrah or Zinfandel in them because those grapes are cheaper. Actually, not Zinfandel, but Syrah is a lot cheaper, and so it's an easy way to increase color and increase volume, or even using Petite Syrah in some respects. But this wine, the selling point here is that it's 100% Bordeaux. There is no Rhone varieties or old Italian varieties in it. And I'm going to keep it that way. So 85% of the wine will always be Cabernet Merlot based.
Nick Goldschmidt here. I'm the winemaker for Stationmaster, and today we're picking the Merlot, which is part of the red blend. And just everything looks fantastic. This vineyard is relatively old, and the Cabernet on the hill is behind me, and the Petit Verdot is over there. It's a bit bright. But today we're picking Merlot, which is the other part of the blend. So Stationmaster is only sold at Wegmans. It's just a fantastic little red blend that we make, and I'm really excited to launch it this year. And the Merlot is an exceptional vineyard because it's super old, so the roots are really deep. We don't have to irrigate much, and we don't get any dehydration. And the flavors here are really intense and really just red fruit and black cherries, and oh, it's just awesome. Anyway, hope you get a chance to try the Stationmaster red blend at Wegmans.
So yeah, the red blend, as I said, will be no Syrah. It'll always be Cabernet and Merlot, and certainly the best value out of the Alexander Valley that I know of. So let's look at the Cabernet. The Cabernet is, we showed a little bit of it on the hill there. It's a very old vineyard. Again, it's an old mass selection. There's no clones, so very open, very loose clusters. We pick it 3 different ways, as I've already described. And as an individual, I mean, when we talk about, people often ask me, when do I drink Napa Valley? When do I drink Alexander Valley for dinner? Well, for me, Alexander Valley is a little bit what I talked about with white wine. And that with Alexander Valley, it tends to be more red fruit, a little bit more juicy. And so, you know, it's the perk up mouth character in the Cabernet that you get from the Alexander Valley. So I generally drink Alexander Valley with food, and then I'll drink the Napa Valley with cheese later on. But I won't go too much into this, but you can see how steep this vineyard is, which is fairly rare. And what I'm going to do here during the video is we're going to zoom in here, and I'm going to show you how small these berries are. These berries are very small because it's relatively dry farm. And so when you have a small berry, you have a lot of concentration, a lot of skin to pulp ratio. And that's what makes this Cabernet really, really intense. It's a really beautiful vineyard, and you can see it's totally free draining.
This vineyard was planted in 1989. You can see very loose, very open, so nice even color, beautiful slope, perfectly balanced at about 2.5 ton an acre. Just wonderful wine, wonderful vineyard, beautiful. Anyway, Stationmaster 2019.
So,
G'day.
and then putting the 3 wines together, this is really the key piece.
And everything we do is single vineyard. And the way we get complexity out of a single vineyard is by choosing blocks and styles, or working the wines to the way the vines best exemplify themselves. So when I was young, I walked into a room once at a pretty well-known winery with 200 wines on the table. I'm wondering, how am I going to blend 200 wines? I came from New Zealand, I didn't know anything about Cabernet. And so working with a consultant, we figured out the best way to do this is to put them into families. Elegant wines, which are the soft berry fruit wines right up on front of the tongue. The powerful wines, which provide the fleshiness and the richness. And the dense wines, which give us structure and power. So when we go ahead and line all those wines up, I sorted all the elegant wines together, and I chose the best elegant wines and made a blend. I got the best powerful wines, made a blend. The best dense wines and made a blend. And we had 3 wines, all from the same vineyard, all from maybe in the same block or not the same block, but all from the same vineyard. And then we made a blend of these 3 wines, and it was the most complex wine that we could possibly make. So today I continue that process with elegant wines. we can extract them a little bit more aggressively because we know that the tannins are in lower concentration than the fruit, so we can extract more tannin. Whereas on a dense wine, if we made wine like that, they become too dry and too tannic. So we lower the extraction and try and make the wines more fruit forward. So if I was to drink an elegant wine, I'm going to get more red cherry. Great structure, very forward in the mouth, very, very elegant, very ripe, but good acidity, red fruit, and very forward in the mouth. The powerful wine, I can immediately get it. It's more black cherry, a little bit of walnut. And the mouth is really rich, really full, powerful. Not a lot going on in the front of the mouth, not a lot going on in the structural part of the mouth either. And then the dense wines, much more chocolate, a lot more black cherry, but all finished, very supple tannins, good structure, good acidity. And so when we put the three together, hopefully, and it's never 30-30-30, because in a warm vintage, I probably want a little bit more of the dense component, whereas in a cool vintage, I want more of the elegant component. So it really depends on the vintage. And when I put all three together, we get the most complex wine we possibly can from the same vineyard. And that's how we make single vineyard wines really complex.
So yeah, I hope that sort of shows. I know it's we're flying at 60,000 feet very quickly here, but I have other videos on YouTube that explain how and why we make different picking decisions in the vineyard. But to me, it's that complexity thing about, you know, taking these different soils. It's not like, you know, these. I can pick up a stone. This is why I live in earthquake country. This is why I live in Chile and Argentina and New Zealand and California and Canada, where I love making wines in those countries. I make wine in Australia, but I'm not so sure about Australia. I mean, it's a big flat pancake and there's not that much soil difference, right? But in California, I mean, I could throw a stone on them in a different vineyard. But, you know, in the wisdom of whoever it was that cut up land, I mean, they just basically broke up land on hillsides and rivers. They don't break land up on soils, and so you end up with these massive diversity of soils. And I will tell you one thing, and this is a little bit controversial, but I might as well throw some controversy in there just to stir things up a little bit. Terroir doesn't exist. People talk about the importance of terroir. Terroir does not exist because we irrigate. So we've actually changing the way that terroir is reflected into the wine. So people say wine is made in the vineyard. Yeah, okay, I get it. But it's only about 40-50%, because now we irrigate. It's not, you know, maybe in Spain we would do a lot of dry farming, and in a couple of vineyards that I work with in California, which I'm changing over to dry farming, only then can we get real terroir to show through. And secondly, when I was the chief winemaker at Allo Domecq, I made 5 winemakers make 10 tons of Cabernet from the same vineyard. 1 year later, I sat down with those 5 winemakers and we tasted those 5 wines. And guess what? They're all completely different. So how does terroir reflect itself? I think it has to be, and I thought that it was really interesting that the Wine Enthusiast came out with the 50 best winemakers. Sorry, the Wine Enthusiast came out with the 40 best winemakers under 40 years old. Do you guys see that? So this is a clue for me. When Kim Jong-un drops a nuclear bomb on California, we all run to the bunker. I am not taking a wine from a 40-year-old winemaker. I mean, that guy's only made wine for 10 years, let alone 5 from the same vineyard. When I'm down under for 15 years, I want to make sure I'm drinking a wine that's going to last. I can show you a wine I made from the Stationmaster vineyard that I made in 1990. So I know how this vineyard's going to react in a good year, a bad year, a dry year, or whatever. So when I'm in the bunker for 15 years, I'm rest assured, I'm pretty secure that I'm going to enjoy the wine. So anyway, that's a little thing. And you know how wines move from purple to red to brown to orange, especially at total beverage. Look, so we don't have any of this crusty stuff. And you know how wines, and as wines age, you see that crusty stuff here. So unless it was the year of the birth of your first child or the year you got married or whatever, get rid of it, because what that is polymeric pigment. That's color, that's flavor, and when you're losing color, you're losing flavor and tannin and life, because tannin is an antioxidant. It's the life-giving breath to wine. And so after 15 years, I still do not have any crusty stuff. And I'm still going to have that wine be in the purple and red realm rather than going to the brown or orange, because I learned how to get rid of the unstable stuff when I work for large corporations. And that's part of trying to take a really complex site and transforming it into something that's complex as well, and something that will last for a long period of time. Hopefully that all makes sense. Anyway, any questions in the chat box? None. You're all scared of me. I don't know what's going on. All right, so let's jump back in, and we're going to talk about the biggie, or the one that really got us started with Wegmans, and man, crazy. So I'm just going to quickly touch on Frantic, and this is a very complicated photo, but I wanted to put it up here because so these big orange boxes are the wines that we are making. So Hillary, which is a very important vineyard for me, comes from here. Game Ranch down here further, and the Lawless vineyard right here. So this is Highway 29. Up to the north here is St. Helena, and to the south is Napa. This is Oakville Cross. So first you get Pope Street, which crosses over at St. Helena, then you get Rutherford Cross, and then you get Oakville Cross. And as you're heading south, you get to Nickel, Mondavi, Opus, and this is Napa Wine Company. Napa Wine Company used to be Inglenook. The vineyard that we're talking about with Lawless, and sorry, to be really specific, this block right here is Lawless. This block right here is the Cabernet that goes into Frantic, and then the Merlot for Frantic just comes from across the river on the backside of Opus. We also have this vineyard over here, which is another project that I hope to be working on at some point. So we have 7 different vineyards now in Oakville that we're able to make wine from. And I chose Oakville over Rutherford because I find the tannins of Rutherford I know that Rutherford may be a little bit more famous with wineries like Camus, but Oakville also has a lot of famous wineries: Mondavi, Opus, Screaming Eagle, Scarecrow, Harlan, Bond, etc. So, and as we go down the street here, of course, opposite our other vineyards, we have Groth, Plumpjack, Rudd, of course, are also in Oakville. So really cool area. But to make this vineyard at Lawless, I have to tell you, man, it was like a matter of timing when I met the Wegmans team, when Jim came in, and it's part of the story. Hopefully, I think I've got it here. So this is just a little closer view. That's the Opus winery. This is Oakville Cross. This is where we make Lawless, and this is where we make the Frantic. So you can see the proximity is just, it's an awesome, awesome site. And over here is Hillary. The 2 cool things about the Lawless vineyard is it's organic and it's dry farmed. So this is true terroir. And this vineyard is super old, which makes it even really cooler. And I should have mentioned this earlier, Team Wegmans, but everything we do is 100% single vineyard, which is true for everything except, single vineyard is true, single varietal except for the red blend and the Frantic. So single varietal, single vintage, and everything is vegan. So we don't use any fining products or any filtration at all with these wines. So the key element for this vineyard is it's dry farmed, it's organic, and the dry farming is important because the berries change. The berries are minuscule, and you'll see a little video here. And then in the winery, we make this wine actually right on the property, so we hardly transport the wine at the grapes at all. We make it right at Napa Wine Company. And this is not the slide that I was hoping to show. So you can see this is an irrigated berry, and this is a dry farmed berry. And you can see how loose these clusters are as well. So we don't use any irrigation, and that's why we get this big difference. And the problem with organics is that we get good guys and bad guys living in the same vineyard. And it's a matter of sometimes we just have to make sure that we get the good guys in a high enough population so we can eliminate the bad guys until after we pick the grapes. And then afterwards, of course, it will come along. So the story goes that my wife is a lawyer, and we were prevented from being part of the Oakville Growers Association for a number of years. And even though we were one of the bigger producers out of Oakville, I was not able to get in. And it was at that time we met with Wegmans, and I was telling the story that we were basically eliminated. And so we put the lawyer thing together, the inability to get back into the Oakville Growers Association. So we came up with this name Lawless, because we're going to continue to make damn good wine from Oakville, whether other people will let us or not. So it was a really cool concept, and that's where the name came about. I always said, if they invited me back into the Oakville Growers Association, I would come crawling, which is exactly what they did. And I did go crawling, and I am a member of the Oakville Growers Association. I'm very grateful for it. I think they're a great group of people. But Lawless by then had already started, and we weren't going to stop making it. So that's where the name comes from. And thanks to the help of Jim for putting it together. So a couple of things that we do, because it's organic and dry farmed, it's an earlier harvest, so the alcohol tends to be a little bit lower. We do pick it 3 different ways again. I pick the outside vines separately to the inside vines, because outside vines don't have any competition. So they tend to be bigger vines and bigger canopy, and they ripen a little bit differently. And we certainly tie in the site-specific winemaking that I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the Stationmaster Cabernet. If somebody says their vineyard is organic, look at the ground. You can tell immediately. This is a photo of the ground, and you can see the cobwebs. What does this tell me? It tells me that no herbicides are used, because those spiders are alive. And you also get them in the canopy. But I don't want to talk about this either too much, but my second degree is in organics and biodynamics. And I'm not a big believer in organics and biodynamics, or in what is loosely termed sustainability. But what each one of these things do is make us go into the vineyard and reconsider what we're doing. And I am a huge proponent of banning herbicides. I just think glycosides are shocking to the environment. Roundup, you should never touch Roundup. It's just, anyway, I could get carried away about talking about it. But we have to find other ways to control weeds, and we have found a way. There are mechanical ways on a vineyard like this. It's not a steep hillside, it's not stony, but I'm working with some guys right now. One of the things that I'm working with is, one of the sets of people I'm working with is a mechanical weeder. I mean, mechanical weeders already are in existence, but I also want to create a way to weed without using more compaction. So the problem is, when you farm organically, you actually have to drive your tractor more often up and down the road. And so trying to figure out a way to do that. Jim, we're not going back to rosé, mate. I caught you on screen.
Let me turn my video off.
Yeah, so getting rid of herbicides is huge, and then secondly, fungicides is going to be a little bit more difficult, and then insecticides. But as far as fungicides go, the big problem that we have is powdery mildew. But we can actually solve powdery mildew with an organic spray, which is sulfur, which is basically what people use in Bordeaux anyway. So we're very close to getting this across. Let me quickly put it this way. Organics include, pyrethrins are organic. Pyrethrins are the world's most toxic insecticide, but they're organic. And so this is why you got to be careful about what's important to you. You know, is orange juice good for you? We could talk all day about that, because, you know, there's so much lead in orange juice, because oranges absorb lead from the atmosphere. So just be careful. You know, it's everything in moderation. And if something's important to you, investigate it. Find out why it is important. So anyway, just my little comment. My big thing is about herbicides and getting that under control.
Not sure if I should show you this, but this is what organic vineyards are like. You get cobwebs everywhere. You can see some down there on the ground as well. But yeah, look at that cobweb. So this is the beautiful thing about farming organically. You just don't get, without the use of herbicides, you get a lot of natural insects and predators floating around, of course, out here. So we don't irrigate this vineyard either, and this is the end result. Lots of insects.
So I was talking earlier about ripening. So one of the key things that we look at is, during veraison, which is when the berries change color, is the increase in sugar up to around about 23.5 Brix. But flavor is judged purely by tasting the berry, and that's why it's important to go out and taste the berry. And then tannins move from green tannins to dusty tannins to dry tannins to ripe tannins. And where these three things meet in Bordeaux has traditionally been about 100 days. But because we live in California, we typically can have another month of hang time. So in Napa Valley, we can hit 130, 135 days. In Alexander Valley, which is cooler, we can hit 145 days. So we have all this extra power and extra weight that we can develop in the wine. And just really quickly, I brushed over that slide earlier because it was in the wrong spot. But I just want to, when we talk about Frantic, this wine is actually not going to be 85% Cabernet and Merlot. It's going to be 100% of Cabernet Merlot. I'm not right now. I can promise you it'll always be 85%, but right now it's 100%. And I do have the ability to put some Petit Verdot in, but I have chosen not to do that yet. Right now it's only a blend of 2 vineyards. And the name Frantic comes from how frantic we are at harvest time. And people often talk about, there's 1,000 decisions made in a bottle of wine between planting the vineyard and you guys drinking it. But I would say there's probably 2,500 decisions that are made. And so hence the name Frantic. And because a very wise person said to me once, let's face it, every story that I've had and every idea I've got from somebody else. But one of the, let's admit it now, before I get called up because I put this on YouTube and people are going to call me. So Frantic, we plan for the vintage, we plan for how the wine tastes, and we plan for everything, and then we get rain. The truck broke down, the crusher went down, we had a power cut. So this very wise lady said to me once, look, winemaking is the art of the practical. And that's truly what it is. We can plan for anything we want, but on the day that we want to harvest and the way that we want to harvest and everything like that, something can come along and screw this thing up. And that's what just makes this whole industry so frantic and really hard to predict. And so this is a label sort of memorializing that. And so I hope you get a chance to try that as well.
G'day, Nick here. I'm out here in Oakville. This is Lawless country. Just thought I'd check in on a vineyard here. So I'm going to take a couple of berries off a loose cluster. I'm going to put them on my mouth. I spit the pulp and the seeds out. I chew the skin. I spit the skin out. And then I spit again and I look at the color. I think you can see there was some color there. We're still about 3 weeks to a month away from harvest out here in Oakville. And this is Lawless country, which is our organic, dry farmed vineyard out here in the heart of Napa Valley. Oakville, Lawless, beautiful vineyard.
So yeah, we did, and we did send this in for rating, and we won't do it anymore, Jim, we promise. But it did get a 93, and it was good to get recognition for the first vintage that we did for you guys. Anyway, just to I can send it out again if you want, Jim, but I don't want to push it. Anyway, so just to wrap up, this is the only company that we do exclusives for, and wow, thank you. You saved my ass during COVID. We make wines from my 2 favorite countries, of course, where I'm from, New Zealand, and where I live today, which is the USA. New Zealand is classic, elegant, new world, and you see, it's the fastest growing category in the US right now. It's faster than Prosecco. New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc is growing quicker than Prosecco. And if you look at the global business in the US, New Zealand has the 2nd highest average FOB as well. So there's more profit for retailers such as yourselves, hopefully, in supporting New Zealand's as well. And then in the US, we talk about a lot of old vine situations, which is really cool. And, I've been living now in Napa, Sonoma for 30 years. And 2008 was when I went out on my own. And if you recall, the economy in 2008 was not too flash. And so a lot of growers were being released from my ex-companies, LVMH, Constellation, Jim Beam, etc., Alodemic. And these guys didn't have a route to market. And these were small guys, small to the big companies, but big to me, 20 acres, 30 acres. Those are quite big vineyards for a guy like me. And they didn't have a route to market. And so that's why we have a number of different labels, because I have a number of different growers, and I want to keep each one of them unique. And you know, it's a partnership. I mean, when you come out to, as you know, Jim's going to invite you all out, right? All expenses paid trip to Nick Goldschmidt's house. And what's going to happen is you're going to show up, and I'm going to get you to meet the damn grower. You can meet the vineyard manager. You can meet the owner, because it's this relationship. That these things are real. These are real people, man. And yeah, you know, you can't get a better story than a guy standing there in a pair of gumboots and a pair of shorts in the summer, smoke. You know, you had a beer with him or a whiskey with him the night before, and now he's extrapolating about his, you know, 20 years of driving a tractor up and down the road. I mean, these are real people. These are real places, and so we really value the time that you guys can come and spend with us. So yeah, Chardonnays and Bordeaux varietals have always been my focus, right way back to my CME days. Although I came to California, believe it or not, to make Pinot Noir, and so that's how I ended up in California. But I've migrated over to the bigger varietals. Everything we do is vintage, variety, vineyard, and vegan, except for the Frantic and the red blend. They will. I mean, the red blend for Stationmaster is actually from the same vineyard. It's just different varietals, but Frantic actually comes from 2 different vineyards just across the street from each other. These are real stories, real people, as I said. I've been working here since 1990. You're talking about very famous neighbors in the Alexander Valley. We're talking about the property on the other side, right next to, is Pete Sagacio's own ranch, Lancaster, Silver Oak, and Alexander Valley Vineyards, of course. And then in Oakville, as you saw on the map, Nickel, Opus, Mondavi, the old Inglenook, right there as well. If you come out and visit us, we do have a tasting room. Make sure that we know that you're coming out, because we don't pour anyone's Stationmaster except you guys. But we do have a tasting room and pour house at the pour house, and it's a really cool place to come visit, because there's about 10 different wineries there that and quite esoteric, and so it's a really cool place to come visit. If you'd like to follow us, we'll send you the link for YouTube via Jim, of course. And but if you want to follow me on Instagram, I sort of haven't been posting. I've taken a week off for the first time because I'm in quarantine. And of course, if you don't support us, I'm going to send these guys out to completely destroy any Wegmans customers and clientele that you may have. So please be on your best behavior, and hopefully you'll support us as well. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And if there's any questions, I know that was really fast. I didn't even tell any sheep jokes or anything. So I didn't pick on too many nationalities. I kept it clean. So, you know, all good. So, yeah. Any questions at all? You know what?